The morning sun was just beginning to rise over Patna, casting long shadows across the chaotic streets filled with honking vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians weaving through the crowd. The air was thick with humidity and the mingled aromas of street food, frying samosas, steaming chai, and sweet jalebis. Colorful banners hung from every electric pole, some freshly pasted, some torn and fluttering in the breeze. Each banner displayed a smiling candidate, promising change, development, and prosperity. But beneath the vibrant colors and festive atmosphere, a sense of tension lingered, almost palpable. Dhruv Rathi stepped carefully along the uneven pavement, notebook in hand, surveying the scene with the trained eye of an investigative journalist. His camera crew followed silently, capturing the stark contrast between the cheerful campaign displays and the anxious, hurried expressions of the voters moving through the streets. This election was supposed to be a celebration of democracy, Dhruv began, looking directly into the camera, his tone calm but carrying the weight of concern. Yet, from the very first day, there have been reports suggesting that the process may have been compromised. He paused, glancing at a nearby polling booth where a line of people stretched around the corner, and continued, "When democracy is undermined, it affects not just the election but the faith of the people in the entire system." The team moved closer to one of the crowded polling stations. Inside, the air conditioning struggled to keep the small room cool, and the hum of conversation mixed with nervous chatter. Voters pushed through the narrow entry, some clutching voter ID cards, others holding letters with their names on the official voter list. Dhruv crouched to film discreetly as an elderly man approached the registration desk, only to be turned away. His name was not on the list. Frustration etched deep lines on his face as he pleaded with the official, who muttered something under his breath and gestured toward the exit. "This isn't an isolated incident," Dhruv narrated as the camera panned over similar scenes across other booths. "There are multiple reports of voters being denied their fundamental right because their names either went missing or were mysteriously deleted from the lists." The scene shifted to a small town office, dimly lit and sparsely furnished, where Dhruv managed to secure a short interview with a local election officer. The man, visibly nervous, fidgeted with a pen as he spoke, casting nervous glances toward the doorway. "We just follow orders," he whispered, almost inaudibly, his words revealing more than he perhaps intended. "If higher authorities tell us to adjust the lists, well, we have no choice." Dhruv's camera lingered on stacks of official papers behind the officer, unused voter slips, tally sheets, and forms that seemed to have been hastily signed and filed. Each document felt like a puzzle piece in a larger story, hinting at manipulation that the average citizen would never notice. Outside the office, Dhruv walked along narrow lanes lined with small shops and crowded homes, speaking with ordinary citizens. Many were hesitant to speak on camera, glancing around nervously before sharing their experiences in hushed tones. One young woman recounted how she was pressured to vote for a particular candidate, not by strangers but by people who had once been friends. An elderly man explained how a local leader threatened villagers that their ration cards would be cancelled if they did not follow instructions at the polls. The stories were chilling in their consistency, a mixture of fear, coercion, and administrative irregularities that painted a disturbing picture of the election process. Dhruv's team then moved to areas where reports of unusual voting patterns had emerged. In some districts, voter turnout was inexplicably high, almost reaching 100%, while neighboring constituencies reported significantly lower participation. Using data from official sources, Dhruv highlighted these anomalies, overlaying maps and charts to show how the numbers simply did not add up. In a state with a population as large and diverse as Bihar, such uniformity is statistically improbable, he explained. These spikes raise serious questions about whether the votes counted genuinely reflect the will of the people. The investigation took a more technical turn as Dhruv met with an election technology expert. They walked through a small server room, filled with humming computers and blinking lights. The expert explained how electronic voting machines and databases could be manipulated, leaving subtle traces that would be difficult for the average voter or even some officials to detect. Even minor alterations, the expert noted, can dramatically influence the outcome in closely contested constituencies. Dhruv's camera captured the expert pointing to graphs showing unusual voting patterns, anomalies in turnout, and irregularities in how votes were tallied, all of which added another layer to the growing suspicion of malpractice. Later, Dhruv visited a district where trucks had been seen moving large quantities of voting machines at odd hours, long after polls had closed. The streets were eerily quiet, and the camera captured the movement of these vehicles through narrow lanes, juxtaposed against social media footage from local residents documenting the same events. The visual contrast was striking. The official narrative claimed smooth and transparent operations, while the ground reality, captured in these snippets, suggested something more suspicious. As the day progressed, Dhruv and his team documented testimonies from political party workers, journalists, and election observers, all echoing concerns about irregularities. Some reports were minor, like delays in ballot delivery, but others were more severe: missing forms, mismanaged lists, and even allegations of voter impersonation. Each piece of evidence was methodically recorded, organized, and cross-verified to ensure credibility. Dhruv's narration wove these threads together, painting a picture that was both alarming and impossible to ignore. By late afternoon, the sun was setting over the city, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the growing unease about the election. Dhruv stood atop a small rooftop, looking out over Patna, the bustling streets now quieting as people returned home. "This is not just about a single election," he said, voice steady but filled with urgency. "This is about the trust of millions of citizens who expect their vote to count. When that trust is broken, the foundation of democracy itself is at risk." The camera pulled back to show the city in its entirety, buildings, streets, and homes bathed in the golden hue of dusk, a poignant backdrop to the troubling discoveries of the day. The scene ended not with resolution, but with questions that demanded answers from those in power. Dhruv's gaze lingered on the horizon as the camera slowly faded to black, signaling the end of the investigation phase and setting the stage for the next step: exposing the evidence and revealing the depth of the alleged scam in Bihar's elections. The scene opens in a dimly lit room, where Dhruv Rathi sits at a wooden desk, papers scattered around him, and a laptop open in front of him. The low hum of a ceiling fan provides a background rhythm as Dhruv addresses the camera directly, his tone serious and measured. In the previous segment, we saw the irregularities, the anomalies, and the troubling reports from Bihar. He begins. "Now, it's time to look at the evidence, the proof that raises questions about the integrity of this election." He starts by pulling up detailed graphs on his laptop screen, projected onto a larger display behind him. The first set of charts shows voter turnout across multiple constituencies. Some districts recorded nearly 100% turnout, a statistic that, in a state as populous and diverse as Bihar, is statistically improbable. Dhruv points to one particular district, highlighting the numbers of registered voters versus those who actually cast their votes. "Here," he explains, "we see entire villages reporting full turnout, while neighboring areas have abnormally low participation. This pattern is not random, it suggests manipulation or irregularities that cannot be ignored." Next, Dhruv moves on to screenshots of voter lists and forms obtained through official channels. He compares last year's lists to the current ones, pointing out missing names, duplicates, and inconsistencies in how voters are recorded. Thousands of voters appear to be unaccounted for, while in some areas, the same names appear multiple times, he says, his finger tracing over the data on the screen. Such discrepancies are not just clerical errors, they indicate that the process has been tampered with. To strengthen his argument, Dhruv introduces testimonies from local citizens. A video clip plays showing a middle-aged man speaking quietly into a mobile camera. "I went to vote, but they said my name wasn't there," he recounts. "I've voted in every election for 30 years, and suddenly I'm missing from the list." Another clip shows a young woman explaining how she was coerced by a local party worker, who told her that her family would face consequences if she voted for a different candidate. Dhruv's narration overlays these clips, emphasizing the patterns of intimidation, coercion, and administrative irregularities emerging from multiple districts. The investigation then shifts to technology. Dhruv sits down with an election technology expert, a soft-spoken professional surrounded by monitors displaying lines of code and voting data. The expert explains, in layman's terms, how electronic voting machines and voter databases can be manipulated. Even small changes, the expert warns, can alter results in close constituencies. There are methods to inject errors, delete votes, or even duplicate them, and these manipulations often leave subtle traces that are hard to detect without careful analysis. Dhruv nods, asking for specific examples. The expert pulls up sample logs from past elections, highlighting anomalies in vote counts and machine activity. Graphs show sudden spikes in voting numbers during unusual hours, patterns that statistical analysis reveals as highly unlikely in normal conditions. Dhruv then turns to footage of trucks transporting electoral equipment late at night, long after polls had officially closed. The camera pans across narrow lanes, where trucks loaded with machines move silently under minimal supervision. Social media posts from local citizens appear alongside the footage, showing timestamps and GPS coordinates that corroborate the unusual movement of equipment. This isn't conjecture, Dhruv points out. Multiple independent sources confirm that these machines were moved under circumstances that should have raised alarms. The lack of transparency in these actions further undermines confidence in the process. The narrative moves to statistical analysis. Dhruv overlays charts comparing expected voter behavior with actual results. Some candidates received implausible margins in constituencies that had historically been competitive. Voting patterns, when plotted geographically, reveal clusters of near-identical outcomes, suggesting the results may not reflect genuine voter preferences. When you analyze these numbers carefully, Dhruv explains, the anomalies are too significant to be mere coincidence. There is a pattern emerging, one that points to systemic manipulation. Interviews with independent journalists and local election observers add more context. A reporter from a district office explains how complaints about missing ballots were often ignored, or dismissed as minor errors. A citizen activist recounts being threatened for attempting to monitor polling stations. Dhruv pieces these narratives together, showing that the irregularities are not isolated incidents but part of a larger, concerning trend. He emphasizes that these reports, while anecdotal, are corroborated by data and observation, making a strong case for investigation. Dhruv then shifts focus to social media and digital evidence. Screenshots from WhatsApp groups, Facebook posts, and Twitter threads reveal messages that appear to coordinate voter influence and misinformation. Some posts instruct citizens to vote in specific ways, while others spread false claims about polling procedures. Dhruv analyzes these posts with his team, showing patterns of coordinated messaging that coincide with spikes in voting numbers in certain areas. Digital tools, when misused, can amplify manipulation, Dhruv warns. This is a new frontier of electoral interference that cannot be ignored. The camera cuts to Dhruv summarizing all the evidence on a whiteboard, connecting data points, testimonies, and expert analyses. He draws lines between missing voter lists, improbable turnout, suspicious vote counts, and manipulated digital communication. All these pieces together form a disturbing picture, he concludes. They suggest that the election, which should be a reflection of the people's will, may have been compromised in multiple ways. The discrepancies are too consistent and widespread to dismiss as coincidence. Finally, Dhruv steps outside, overlooking the city as the sun sets, casting long shadows over the buildings. The streets below are quieter now, but the echoes of the day's investigation linger. This isn't just about one state or one election, he says, addressing the camera directly. It's about the integrity of democracy itself. When citizens lose faith in the process, the consequences are profound. Elections are meant to be free, fair, and transparent. When they are not, we all lose. The scene ends with a slow pan over Patna at night, the city lights flickering as if mirroring the fragile state of democratic trust that has been shaken. Dhruv's voiceover concludes, the evidence is clear, the concerns are real, and the need for accountability is urgent. Bihar's election raises serious questions, and it is our responsibility to demand answers. Only then can democracy truly function as it should. The screen fades to black, leaving viewers with the gravity of the investigation and a sense of urgency to seek truth and justice.